Please welcome the founder and chief test pilot at Gravity Industries, Richard Browning.
Flight. It's a subject that I think has fascinated me since I was a child. I remember many hours actually, as a kid with my late father trying to fly these very simple little model gliders. They're so basic compared to what you get with drones nowadays, but I remember, yes, lots of fun times trying to fly those and also rebuild them when having crashed them loads of times. Back in 2016, I hatched this seemingly ludicrous idea of, could you have a run at the whole challenge of flight, particularly human flight? Could you reimagine it in a way from a sort of ground-up point of view, where rather than sitting inside a flight vehicle or being strapped to a flight vehicle, and we've done that very well, obviously, in the last 100 years, otherwise I wouldn't be standing here. What if you actually tried to employ the human mind and body in a much more kind of intimate way and kind of trying, as far as possible, standing here now, actually fly? It still sounds weird. I can't find a better way of describing it. And part of the inspiration was the time I spent with the British Royal Marines, I guess, learning myself to be able to push my body and my mind further. The military is very good at doing that. And I used to get into things like this, calisthenics, where you can learn to support your body weight in weird positions. Highly impractical. That's not how we usually get on the London Underground. And it was an idea that I think evolved in my mind. And I got to the point where I realized the missing link, very simply, was horsepower. I'm not quite mad enough to think you can kind of flap your way to this outcome. So 2016, around March of that year, in a little country lane in the UK, and this is all alongside a day job. I was an oil trader for 16 years in the City of London. I didn't tell them what I was doing at the weekends. This was ground zero. This is getting a little micro gas turbine, baby version of what's on a jet fighter with a few design changes. Only weighs about 4 or 5 pounds and puts out about 40 pounds of thrust. And actually, the big learning from that moment was that feeling was just this spongy force. It's almost just like leaning on that table. So kind of emboldened by that, there was an obvious step to take, which is now you have two, and now not a mop bucket with the fuel tank inside. Now I'm mobile. Now, if you watch this little clip here where I'm pushing, you can see now that's a lot of force. I mean, in kilos, it's 40-odd kilos of force, so you're getting close to 100 pounds of force. And it's really interesting to note, when you lean on it, actually that's easy. When you point it sideways, it starts to really kind of beat you around. Now, having had two work quite well, you can see the sort of natural progression of this journey. This was a great stage, because actually your arms are really quite, you're in control of your arms, and that wasn't enough power to actually take off, so it was a nice stage to get to. This trial and error, with the emphasis on the error, process took place over the summer. We tried to work out where else you could attach thrust to the human body that would allow it to become as intuitive as a bicycle. It's amazing, how you just add a bicycle to a human body and use the mind for balance, and how intuitive and what a brilliant partnership that is. That was not such a good example, and the tether system really didn't work very well. However, the model that we started to kind of gravitate towards was one of an engine on each, or two engines on each arm, the net thrust feeling like it was going up your arm, and then an engine on the back of each leg. But you see the problem in that clip. It's weird. As your leg starts to get lifted, your foot can't feel the ground anymore, and your brain starts to make your kind of legs pedal. It's a very weird thing. Anyway, I had to not only try and work out how to turn that off in my head, but also stop damaging the engines every time it fell over from a couple of feet on that farmyard. But by November that year, I suppose at the time, seemingly impossible actually happened, which was this very lame, fuzzy little flight, still fighting one leg. And that was it. That was actually turning mad idea into something that actually flew for 6 seconds across that farmyard. And it's quite fun to reflect at this moment, over the intervening 5 years since then, just how far we've come. And this is a sort of no attention span, 60 seconds run through that's already now out of date by quite some way, of the 200 events in 36 countries that we've flown. And they're either commercial events or otherwise military or search and rescue medical ones that you'll see soon. So it's quite nice just to see how far you can take a ludicrous idea, and I'll touch on this at the end. I'm a passionate believer in the process of innovation. It's one of take a seemingly crazy idea and then as safely and survivably as possible, fail your way to what you never imagined was possible, as long as, and the rule we follow is if failure occurs, and it occurs all the time, or used to in the early days, I'm pleased to say it doesn't so much now, can you get back up again from a safety, reputation, and financial perspective? That's my, in the short time I've got with you today, that's my offer as a takeaway, and that's what I used to use actually running a trading book as well. It's all about being able to get back up from your failures, and it allows you to do crazy things like that. The fire has nothing to do with me, by the way. That is a bad timed slide when I'm talking about failure. Something I'm also very proud of with this ludicrous journey is that we haven't raised money since 2017 because we've actually sort of generated our own income from this in doing things like training over 500 people to learn to fly these. So there's a great location in the UK about an hour outside of Heathrow at the Goodwood Estate, if people know that. It's where the Festival of Speed in the UK takes place. It's all Spitfires and racing cars, and we fit in great. And there are louder things there than us. We're actually setting up a training center in just outside of San Francisco in Napa, hopefully this summer, and it's the most strange process. You're never going to believe me, but you get tethered up to this thing, you stand there, you feel the force on your arms, you realize you can lean on it, just like leaning on a table. It literally feels like that. The rear engine lifts you slightly forward, and then that magic moment that you see with a kid when you take your hand off the saddle and they just get it and they never think about it again, the same thing happens here. And the probably best example is one of these clients here you'll see is actually one of my two boys doing a great job in a second of applying the mindlessness you need to apply when you're learning to fly one of these. There he is, not got a clue what's going on. He's just smiling and enjoying the view. And if you think about it, that's what happens with riding a bike or surfing or skiing or snowboarding. This taps into your natural human ability to balance in a way that's frankly more, I suppose, intuitive than walking or running in some ways. In the same vein, in terms of how fast we're progressing, a massive catalyst to that I really feel I always try and shout out is additive manufacture, 3D printing. We're able to have an idea, get it CAD'd up, and then get that printed. Nowadays, in polypropylene of all things, we've moved away from aluminium and titanium and steel just because it's frankly more appropriate, bizarrely enough. That can change in design within a sort of turnaround time of about 2 weeks. A couple of days to do the CAD work, a week or so to get the print back, and then we'll put it together, go for test fly it. So the ability for us to just iteratively progress is hugely enhanced by this wonderful technology of additive or 3D printing. Dancing around here, another example of why we're never done with this whole journey as well is, and you could do a whole talk on this as well, this is the journey of VTOL transition. So if you imagine a Harrier aircraft, or you imagine the F-35, they blow air downwards, you rise up, and then you start to transition into becoming an aircraft. We thought, well, we do the first bit, I wonder how close we could get to doing the second bit. Turns out we could do the second bit pretty well. Now, we kept a bit of a lid on just how fast you go, because you've got around, with the latest suit, around 1,500 horsepower. There's about 350 pounds of thrust in that. So given the frontal area of a human, you're going to go really fast. So this little film here, which I don't like as much as the previous one, the last one was an amazing flight to actually experience. This is where we set the current Guinness World Record for how fast you've actually flown, or we've flown in one of these. I'll save the surprise for when you see the dial coming up in a minute. You get a nice example of how you gradually transition into flatter and flatter, and you have to use your body to actually maneuver rather than thrust vectoring. That is kilometers an hour before you think it's miles an hour. I'm not quite that mad. And this is a good example as well of how you transition back out. That's something that the Harrier and the F-35 people had to learn as well. We had to learn it in real time, which is quite exciting. You actually have to turn the power up because you've lost the aerodynamic lift. So another example of something, an amazing sort of foray we went down. However, in the limited time I have with you, I want to just touch on two areas, which I'll let play while I'm talking. And you might have possibly seen some of this online. It's gone around pretty far and wide. I was with the Royal Marines in the UK for about 6 years alongside my day job, and they put on this exercise. It was probably the, culmination of 6 or 7 exercises, and the idea was, could you use the equipment for maritime boarding? So you've got bad guys on the ship. I know it's a Royal Navy ship, but run with me. How quickly could you get onto the bridge deck of the ship? And if you think about the alternatives, it's a pole with a caving ladder, and you have to try and snag the railings of the ship. It's a horrendous process. I'll let it play out at the end, and you'll see what they do now. Or you're a hovering helicopter with a fast rope and all the rest of it, neither of which you can use your hands, for people who think you can't use your hands. We have a helmet-steered suppressive weapon capability for those who are interested in that. This was 16 seconds to get to that bridge deck, and I could have just provided cover, but instead of that, I'm using the old technology and providing the ladder for those who don't have a jet suit. Strange amalgamation of the new and the old. But this has become a huge area for us. We are working now with about 7 different special forces around the world on the Allied front, and the more theaters and environments we end up getting to play in, the more we keep changing the rules, because you really can just move human resources up and move in a couple of miles within seconds and do a task and come back again. So there you go. You can see that process. I mean, personally, flying is a hell of a lot easier than doing that, especially at night in heavy sea. And there is the demonstration of exfilling back out, exfiltrating back out, although I'm weirdly landing on the same ship I've just attacked. But anyway, ignore that detail. Now, the other big area that I'm really proud of, just bearing in mind where this started from in a farmyard alongside the day job, is the whole search and rescue, or let's say medical response role. If you imagine a paramedic on a motorbike, they cut through the traffic and they get to the casualty and they sort out breathing or blood flow or something else critical that's potentially going to end your life within the first, critical 40 minutes, 60 minutes. This is a mountain in the UK in the Lake District. It takes about an hour and 20 minutes to walk up at pace. The weather, you'll see in a minute, was really bad, and it tends to be really bad in this place, so you can't often get helicopters onto the top, so the only option is that walk. And if you've got a cardiac patient, they tend to, frankly, not make it. So we parked up. This is obviously a planned exercise, didn't just turn up. We parked up and left the vehicle roughly where the search and rescue guys or the mountain rescue guys would usually depart from, and managed to get to the summit in, I think it was 3.5 minutes. That was 1.2 miles that way and 2,000 feet in vertical ascent. It was quite a demonstration because, and I'll let it just play into the foggy part. It was quite exciting to actually be flying along with probably visibility down to barely from me to that screen. And I ended up just flying, looking at frankly, it was an iPhone app, map system where I could actually just follow waypoints. It got so bad that the 2 drone systems dropped out. I should be able to, it's a shame I can't fast forward this one, but there you go, you get an idea of the fog, and we got to the top, as I say, in about 3.5 minutes. That is something we're trying to roll out. We've got a paramedic already trained in the UK, and they should be operational by later this year, that's our hope. And it's quite nice because it's quite closely allied to the military role, but it's just tends to be, when you get there, you're being more friendly than the military folks. But in terms of working in bad weather and in difficult conditions, it's a great analogy. There you go. You can see an example of the weather. Now, I'm going to shuffle that on. I want to just take the opportunity to reflect on what I said right at the beginning, which is this subject I'm very passionate about innovation, because a lot of words are used around innovation, and I'm not always sure they're from people who actually are walking that walk. I'm passionate that you have an idea, even if it's a crazy one, even a childlike thought that seems impossible. There is a process you can go in where you work out as quickly as possible you can go and test that idea. This is what we do all the time. And go and take the risk of it failing. The critical thing is, and I used to do this running a trading book, and now I do it running Gravity, is if failure occurs, because it will happen all the time if it's a meaningful test, can you get back up again? Obviously from a safety point of view, but also reputationally and financially. And that is our magic sauce that we use to keep pushing this whole crazy journey ever forward. And somebody who knows a lot about that and is, I suppose, a gleeful embracer of things going wrong is your host, my good friend, Adam Savage, who I think is going to appear, hopefully, if we've coordinated this well. There he is. But thank you.
Can I just start by telling the story of how we met?
Go for it.
I got to tell you, so I'm at the TED conference. I'm wandering around in the haze that you wander around in the TED conference. And this Brit comes over and says, "Mate, you're a legend. I love Mythbusters. And I've just gotten here with my rocket pack." And I'm like, wait, the rocket pack I saw on YouTube last week?
This was the very first flight, other than the accidental raise in a parking lot in San Francisco. Let's ignore that one. The very first public flight. So it was pretty scary in 2017.
And I had seen the video like a week before. So I knew it was all really fresh. And you said, "Well, I haven't brought anyone with me. Would you be my ground crew?" And I was like, I've waited my whole life to be asked this question. Of course I'll be your ground crew.
It was brilliant. We'd never met before, and he literally dropped everything he was doing at that point and then just followed me to the behind-the-scenes room and helped greatly with the huge stress. I mean, it's bad enough doing a TED Talk for the first time anyway, let alone 10 minutes later to go and fall over in front of the world's media. potentially, with this creation. So you were a massive help.
I was wearing this exact jacket?
Yeah, you feature in the film. It's not mentioned. You're just standing in front of me helping it out, yeah.
I love, love, love that you talk so much about failing your way to success. And, you know, what we mean by failure is iteration. It is all just iterative, you know, burning through options. I'm curious if you have more of the failures on tape, because those are my favorites.
So it just so happens, yes, for special audiences, and I would be a fraud if we hid these, we can roll a few of those learning opportunities. Let's call them learning opportunities.
Absolutely.
Right now. So here we go. So many of them are very old, I'm pleased to say. That was running out of fuel. That one was actually the first Guinness World Record attempt we tried. This is fun. I just ended up trying to land whilst forgetting I had about 20 mile an hour forward speed, and I can't run at 20 miles an hour. There's nothing wrong with the gear here. You just let go of the throttle trigger. That was a compressor stall, which is an unusual one. I'm hovering away in the background. This is where we really rinse the engines way harder, and at sea level, where the air density is greater. We rinse the engines way harder than we should have done. We dropped 2 suits in the water at that air show. But you can see a good example of how we do float. A lot of people online say, "Oh, if you're going to die, you're going to die if you go in the water." It's like, if we hadn't thought of that, we shouldn't be doing this.
I love how much this feels like that whole sequence in the original Iron Man film, where
the
things just keep not working.
Well, the garage stage. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes. I mean, yes. We didn't smash. I don't have a lineup of quite those cars to smash into, but yes. This is my main aeronautical engineer, Alex. I think you've met Alex. He piled into the water, and you've definitely met Sam, my CAD designer, who goes in head first here. That was actually the same flight, and this is one of my stuntmen team who didn't quite jump late enough by the time he got the power in. If you're going to do a superhero launch, you've got to dial the power in first. But anyway, that was a learning opportunity. So yeah, there you go. There is some of our, all very low, all very sustainable, if you like. You just graze your knee at worst. And
the thing that I love about showing the failures and being really honest about them is something we learned on Mythbusters from the fans, is that it feels like a hug.
Yeah.
Right? It's easy to be awed by something like this and think, that is impossible. How did someone brilliantly come up with that? And they didn't. You didn't. You have slowly made it better and better and better over time.
Just showing that as the end result is 5% of the journey. And I often get fed up with this when you read like business books about just give everything, never give up, never say die. No, that's rubbish. Constantly learn and pivot and feedback. If you've got somebody lucky enough who never made any mistakes and got to become some billionaire, well, I'd like to meet them.
Yeah.
And if you just read a book that says that's how they did it, you really need to read the book about all the things that didn't work.
Yeah.
Because that's the process that will screw you over if you get it wrong. You've got to keep recovering from endless failures.
The last thing I want to say is when you finally got me to fly, you finally taught me how to fly, and I brought my arms in, and it's not about strength, it's about feeling it in your body, and I rose off the ground. It really did feel like every dream I have ever had about flying.
It is a, I mean, I'm biased obviously, but everybody that gets in this suit, there is a strange process where you do feel like that dream we sometimes have of walking, running, and you step, and you just go wherever you want to. It is kind of like that. It's a lot louder, but it is like that, yeah.
Another big round of applause for Richard Browning. Richard, thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
What a pleasure.